I say no to almost 99% of the brands that actually want to partner with us because they don't align with what our audience wants. I said no to LinkedIn, Monster, and Glassdoor. Everybody's perspective and perception of money is different, of what's a lot and what's a little. And it's just interesting to have those conversations because the only people benefiting from Secrecy are our employers. If you want to do street interviews and like this type of content, you kind of have to have some cojones, like you have to have some courage.
Are you comfortable sharing your salary on camera with us?
I don't have a salary. I don't get paid a salary at all. I make money from my investments.
Can you tell us the origin story of Salary Transparent Street?
I'm going to go on the street and I'm going to ask people how much they make. Filmed that day in Georgetown, went to sleep, posted it that night. In the morning, we woke up and it had 1 million views.
How did this happen?
Welcome to Inside the Creator Studio, an origin story podcast about the world's best video content creators. My name is Mo O'Keefe.
And my name is Katie Kane. On today's episode, we have Hannah Williams from Salary Transparent Street. We're going to talk to her about her origin story, the behind the scenes of her street interviews, and how she handles brand deals.
This show is brought to you by StreamYard, a browser-based tool that lets you live stream to any platform, record podcasts in studio quality, and even host webinars. It's built for creators to make your job way easier, and we actually use it to record this show. Oh, can I tell you a story about Hannah?
Yeah, tell me a story.
Okay, so
usually we record these after the episode, but today, since this is the day before Thanksgiving, we're like rushing out after this. So
yes.
Yeah.
And we start recording with Hannah in like 3 minutes, so I'll make this quick. We were at VidCon in Anaheim. It was me and Lauren from our team and Braden from our team. We were walking back from Denny's going to the conference.
Ooh.
And on the street, I saw Hannah Williams from Salary Transparent Street. And I was like, oh my God, it's Hannah from Salary Transparent Street. I just like yelled it out like a little fangirl. And she just like smiled and waved at us.
You have to tell her that.
I will. There's no way she remembers because like she sees 1 million of these people in every city all the time, I'm sure. But that was my like, oh my God, we're actually at VidCon and there are stars here moment. Because I had been watching her TikToks before that.
That's so cool. Oh, I wonder what she's doing for Thanksgiving.
Oh, well, you can make that one of your rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
Little behind the scenes for the viewers and listeners.
Yeah. I love Thanksgiving food because I love to eat. And also my birthday is right around Thanksgiving. So I get to eat a lot of my favorite food because I just love mashed potatoes. And all of that food is just like, I don't know, it just hits a sweet spot. And I love Black Friday shopping because then I get stuff on sale for my birthday. Ooh. So I get to have an excuse to shop.
And what would you like to buy this Thanksgiving? I mean, this Black Friday?
Actually, I was really wanting to get this, I don't have like a really good weekender bag, and I was really wanting to get that. And Chris just told me this morning, he's like, I'm going to get that for you for your birthday. And I didn't want to ask you what color you wanted because it would be too obvious. But what color do you want? So he's getting it for me. I think I'm going to see how I feel, see if I want to go crazy. Because some years I go crazy and other years I'm like, I don't need any more stuff in my house. I have so many clothes I'm trying to get rid of too. So I'm like, we'll see.
Amen. And with that, Grant, do the thing.
Hannah Williams, or as you're better known, Salary Transparent Street. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
This is so exciting. I'm really, really excited to have you here. We're going to start out with some rapid fire questions. So maybe just keep your answer to a sentence or two.
Okay.
Let's start with, what's your setup for this call? Your mic, your camera, your light, your headphones?
Really low lift. I'm on my laptop, which is like a Microsoft Surface Pro type thing. And I'm using my Apple corded, not wireless headphones, which feels very Gen Z. And weird to use these as good ones.
They're good headphones though, so I don't blame you. What are your favorite shoes to wear out while on the street?
This is such I'm sorry. Like, I love shoes and no one's ever asked me that. And I'm so proud of my Air Force Ones.
Oh, good.
I got these like custom ones made that have like a green accent and like the back says STS. I'm like so proud of them. So thank you. That's like probably my favorite question ever now.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. I thought of it because you walk around a lot, so you need something comfortable.
We walked 17 miles one time when we went to New York, just walking around. And I was in my Air Force Ones, and I'm not sponsored by them. I wish, but my feet didn't hurt at the end of the day. So props to those shoes.
There you go. That's perfect.
Yeah.
What's your favorite activity to rewind?
Ooh, puzzles. I am just I've loved puzzles since I was a kid. I just put on like a comfort show or movie in the background and I just don't look at my phone and I look at the puzzle for a couple hours. I try to time myself and like beat my time for 1,000 pieces and 2,000 pieces. It's weirdly competitive.
No, that's awesome. I love that. What's your favorite city that you've interviewed people in?
Ooh, good question. Favorites, there's always like my favorite city and then how the interviews go is a little different. I'd say DC and like where I live, the DMV metro area is my favorite place to interview just because now people recognize us. So like I was telling you earlier, it's so much easier when people know who we are instead of trying to find complete strangers on the street. But like Portland, Oregon and like Eugene, Oregon were weirdly very easy places to interview. Like people are very open and friendly. So they're a close runner up.
That's awesome. Our editor is from Oregon, so I'll bet he'll love to hear this. He'll be
Eugene was the best. They're so sweet there.
That's so cool. So what are you doing for Thanksgiving? Because at the time of recording, it's Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm lucky my parents live in like the same city as me. They're like 10 minutes away. So very small, very quiet, just me and my husband and my parents. I'm going to try to do a mac and cheese bake later today. We'll see how it goes.
I love that.
But yeah, I'm excited. I love Thanksgiving food. It's probably one of my favorite holidays.
I was saying the same thing to Mo earlier. I'm like so happy to just eat and then fall asleep on the couch.
Yeah. And then like the second plate is always better than the first.
Yes.
It slaps. It's so good.
And then the leftovers. It's all so good. Too much food always, but it's a good thing. It's better than too little.
Such an American holiday.
I know. Just eating and conking out. Yeah. Amazing. Watching football or whatever anybody wants to watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I can share now where I kind of ran into you.
Yeah.
So back
this is so funny.
In June of this year,
okay, where was
our company was in Anaheim.
Yeah, VidCon.
For an event. Yes, VidCon. And like going into it, we were, we kind of had the mentality that like we were going to see stars. So like prepare. And I had been like binging all your TikToks before that. And, I just wouldn't have expected to see you there. But we were walking back from Denny's, like me, Lauren from our team, and Braden, and we were going to the hotel. And I just like saw you on the street, and I was like, "Oh my God, Salary Transparent Street, hi!" And
that makes me so nervous. I'm like, was I smoking? Like,
no, you weren't. You were just walking with some people on your team, just like down the street. But
that's so cool.
That's so funny.
I love VidCon. That's like, it's weird when people tell me that they like get starstruck seeing me because in my mind, I'm like still an up and comer, like a rookie. And so when I went to VidCon, like I was like, I had my list of my star creators that I want to see, and I definitely get starstruck. And so when people tell me they get starstruck with me, I'm like, you're lying. like it's a cool experience. Yeah. I wish we had been able to chat more.
Yeah, next time.
Now you know each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, you've probably told this story a million times, but can you tell us the origin story of Salary Transparent Street? So take us back to the time when you were working as a senior data analyst for the U.S. government in Washington, D.C. You were overworked and underpaid for your role, making $90,000 a year.
Yeah.
What happens next?
This story, it's like, it's such a bummer, but then now when I tell it, I'm like, everything had to happen to be where I am now. So it's not like an unfortunate event anymore. It's like the series of fortunate events. So I accepted this job as a senior data analyst making $90K. And for like context, I went to Georgetown University. I got a management degree, graduated in 2019. So I broke into data after having like no idea what I wanted to do with my life and like not making enough money. And so when I graduated, I was making $45,000 a year, which in context was like a year before I got this $90K deal. So I was like 22, 23 years old, getting like $90,000 as an offer for a senior data analyst because I realized I was like really good at it and I excelled. And in my mind, I was like, I've never seen that kind of money before in my life. I didn't even think about negotiating, thinking that there was more money on the table. I had never learned market research. No one ever like taught me how to advocate for myself or that the world of work is complicated. I just, did what I had to do to pass with my degree and then supposedly was ready for the workforce when couldn't be further from the truth. So I start this job and, everything's good. I thought I hit the lottery. And within a month, my only other colleague on my team was let go, which I was like a contractor. So they like reallocated him, for a better word. And overnight, like there were only two of us on the team. And so when it started, I, had balanced responsibilities. It was fine. But when they let him go, I took on all his work. So like immediately overnight, workload doubled, responsibilities doubled. And, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, they're going to replace him. This is like a temporary thing. They never did. And so like 6 months into it, I'm just like torpedoing towards burnout and like overwhelmed. And I started to wonder, like 90K was good when I started, but now this is different. Like this is a different experience. And so I started wondering, like, am I fairly compensated? Which is not something I had considered yet before. And it led me down this rabbit trail of like all this market research and figuring out how much people were making in my role with my same responsibilities in my area. And DC is a very high cost of living area. So like, how much you can make differs depending on where you're located and your skills. But I knew based on my research on that day that I was making about $20,000 to $25,000 less than other people in the exact same kind of role. And that was a rude awakening. It's a lot of money. And over time, it adds up. And so, the company had been great to me, sort of up till that point. So I'm thinking, okay, like I'm going to ask for a raise. They value me. This is not going to be a problem. I'll be able to nip it in the bud. I put together all my research. I did like everything by the book that Harvard Business Review told me, when asking for a raise. And the management team was like, they ran me around in circles for like 3 months where I had to ask every week, is there an update? Like, what's the update? Which is funny because in the end, they just ended up telling me that I didn't qualify for a raise because I hadn't been there a year and I had to be there a year to get a raise. And even then, they didn't give out raises of more than 3 to 5% at any one time, which was like way less than what I was going to get. So I just like had a very quick experience with realizing how being underpaid has a long-term effect and how it can really damage your career because, here I was stuck in this role, very unhappy, knowing I was underpaid, but kind of not having a way out. And so it's a really difficult situation to find yourself in. And so I started looking for another job, and this is like when everything changed. So I did my first call with a recruiter, and the recruiter asked me on the phone, like, what are your salary requirements? And I just had this light bulb moment. I was like, I've done all this market research. I can guess how much I think I'm worth. And at that point, I was like, my range is 100 to 120K. That's what I'm going to ask for. And in that moment, I was like, but wait, I don't know like what the company's budget is. Like, I don't know what they're going through. So like, even the salary transparency that we have isn't perfect until we have it from the company's side. And so I asked her, I was like, I have nothing to lose here. I'm going to ask her what the budget is for the role. And she told me 115K, like without skipping a beat, which was annoying because I was going to ask for 105. I was already going to undervalue myself. So it was just like so many things happening at once. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I hope I could swear, but I was really frustrated. I was like, this is BS. And so I ended up accepting that role, moved, made 25K, validated that I was underpaid because I got the raise I wanted by leaving the company. But even though I had resolved my situation, I just like couldn't shake that the situation itself hadn't been solved. You know, like I was one of the lucky ones that was able to get the raise and move on. But so many other people are dealing with this because it's a systemic problem every day. So a couple months later, I made like a TikTok account for myself. And I made a video of like all the salaries I had, like every job, every pay, and it went viral. And so like I just had this connection where I was like, social media can be used to fix this problem. And also I validated that people cared about it too. And it wasn't just me. And so I just had this idea. I was like, I'm going to go on the street and I'm going to ask people how much they make to show that even with a stranger, pay transparency is valuable and it has impact to change the system we have. And I had to drag my now husband, fiance at the time out. I was like, hey, like I got this mic on Amazon. Can we go test it? Like, can you film me with your iPhone? This is kind of what I'm thinking. Can you do it? And he's like, okay, like, sure. Filmed that day in Georgetown, went to sleep, posted it that night. In the morning, we woke up and it had 1 million views. And I was like, okay, like not, yeah. And so I was like, not only was I right, like people do care about this, but like I might be able to, you know, change my situation too and do something fun and impactful. And here we are. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's such a great story. And it aligns perfectly with like the hero's journey, if you're aware of that
Yeah,
thing.
I guess.
Like you went on the journey and then you learned something and then you came back to like share it with the people. I
Yeah.
love it.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
A
No,
whirlwind
and
for sure.
it's also just really cool to see that. I mean, I think so many people have been in this situation where you're not really sure what to say when a recruiter or someone you're being interviewed by is saying, well, how much are you looking for? Because
Yeah.
if you say too high, then are they going to reconsider? If you say too low, are you stuck there? So it's really cool that you had that experience and then I don't know, like really pivoted and made this something that was so that became your career in a way, is sort of figuring this
Yeah.
out and talking to people. I just think it's really fascinating.
Thank you. I really think that like timing is everything too. Like, you know, when I didn't graduate into the pandemic, I was like I got a good year of a cubicle and realized it was not what I wanted for my life before I went remote. But I was like, my career kind of started during the Great Resignation, you know, and I credit that a lot to inspiring me to kind of like rebel and feel like I had a voice because I hadn't spent a decade in this, you know, power imbalance that our parents went through, you know, of just like you fill a seat and you don't rock the boat, you know. And so my career started in a tumultuous time that was inspiring. And so I think that I credit that a lot to giving me a little bit of strength to try to do something different. But really, like, I think it demonstrates Gen Z as well that they don't want to do one thing forever. Like people ask me all the time, do you see yourself being a creator, you know, for the rest of your life? And like, what's your end goal? And I don't really know, but gosh, I'm on the coolest journey, you know, and I've been doing it almost 2 years now. If I can do it for 5, like what a great story to tell. And I also know that I have learned these incredible skills and have gone through so many experiences that any corporate company would love to have me on their social media team, you know, so I'm not concerned about job security. Like my parents aren't like, what are you going to do with your life? Like I've got a plan, you know, and I'm glad I took the risk. So it's cool.
Yeah. And the risk has really paid off. And I think it's so crazy how quickly you guys had so many views. I think it makes sense that people like really want to learn how to make more money or find out what other people are making. So of course it's like a hot button topic, but it's so cool that you woke up to like 1 million views. That's like almost unheard of.
I knew it would work because like I mentioned, I had like my personal TikTok account, you know, and I was posting like 3 times a day sometimes on that thing. And I think I got up to like 50K subscribers in 3 months,
wow.
Which like, yeah, I was looking at how other people were doing and I'm like, that's not, you know, that's pretty good. I have something. But then when you get 50K subscribers on TikTok in like a day or 2 days, and like it just kept growing, I was like, okay, this is not normal. There's definitely something that can be built here that if you don't try now, you'll never know. So it
Yeah.
was well worth the risk. I think it paid off.
It
Literally.
definitely did. It definitely did. And I wanted to ask, how has this job changed your relationship with money, not only
Mhm.
because of the stories you hear, but
Mhm.
because you've increased your income through doing something like this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's, I guess, not something I've ever like reflected on, but looking back significantly, it's significantly affected my relationship with money. I think now more than ever, I'm so open to transparent conversations, and I not pressure, but I encourage people to also have transparent conversations, just because like there's so much we can learn from one another with our relationships with money and things that have worked for us. And anytime I talk about money with people, I'm always learning something. I feel like I've figured it all out. And then I hear about, how somebody tackled their student loan debt. And I think what's also important that I've recognized is that when you talk about money, I think there's a cultural attachment to the act of doing so that feels like you're trying to be flashy. Like you're only supposed to talk about money if it's good, like it's either a lot or you're showing off. And I've like been transparent. Like literally I posted a travel vlog today and like the cost of it. And it wasn't meant to be like flashy. And people were like, man, like, I don't know how you save so much money. And I'm like, are you kidding? I thought I spent a lot. So everybody's perspective and perception of money is different of what's a lot and what's a little. And it's just interesting to have those conversations and like what we can learn from one another. So I think it's just made me more transparent, more willing to be transparent, more willing to hear from others. But it's just been all good. I think no one loses when there's transparency. We can just gain.
Yeah, for sure. I think you bring up something really important where we only talk about money if it's a good thing. But I think people
Right.
also consider if it's like, if you're making a really high amount of money, it also can seem like you're bragging. And then people
Mhm.
below you, which like I've been in that situation too. I went to school in New York and
Yeah.
there's a whole negotiation of people who are like very wealthy and whether you're very outward about that or you're not. And
Hmm.
you can't always tell because sometimes people are put down for being maybe exorbitant with their money. But on the other side, I think people even feel like they can't share if they're struggling with money. It's like such a
Yeah.
sensitive conversation. And I think what you're doing is really moving the conversation in the right direction because you're showing people at all levels and saying, this is what you could be making, but also this is what this market looks like for tech, or maybe
Yeah.
it's for nursing, and how we all can talk about this because there's opportunity for people to sort of share the wealth, for lack of a better term.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, seriously, especially the creator economy. There's so much money in
Mhm.
it right now. So
Oh, yeah.
knowing people who, like, maybe you start out as someone who is on the lower end of
Mhm.
salaries, but you can use your skills and make a ton more money. I think it's
Yeah.
really, yeah.
That's what I love about the creator economy in this job is like when I realized that there's no cap, like there's no income limit, like when you work a 9 to 5, you can't make more otherwise you work overtime and then you're trading off your work life balance. So there's
Yeah.
costs to working more and trying to earn more. But gosh, the first time I signed like a 6 month partnership deal that was worth like 6 figures, and I was like, you're telling me I can do this like 5 times over for the year and I can do it again. Like it blew my
Yeah.
mind that there's no cap. And I think that's the beauty of it is like there's no limit.
Yeah, seriously. No, it's really crazy, I think, when we talk about the creator economy, because sometimes people are like, "Wh- how did this
Yeah,
happen?" And
how?
like, where did this come from? And I think there's so many people now who are realizing that their skills and their perspective are worth more than what they're making in their current fields.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like
That's wild.
companies pay, sometimes I feel crazy asking for like our rate is like $15,000 for a TikTok and an Instagram. And I'm like, God, that's insane. Like, who am I to ask for that money? But then if you think about the money that a company will pay for an ad that they put on TV, they pay somebody to script it, someone to creative direct it, so an actor to be in the ad. Then they pay for the rights in the slot for the TV. And they're not even guaranteeing that that their target audiences will see the ad. Because what if those people go into the kitchen during the ad break? But when you work with a creator, you're paying me to do all those things. So my rate is inclusive of all these different talents or the team that I pay to do it. And you're guaranteeing that it's going to reach your target audience because they're on their phones watching it. That is so valuable, and like the size of our audience as well. So when people like question how much creators make, I'm like, we're just small little companies, we have so much power. It makes sense. We should be asking for more.
It totally makes sense. And I do agree. You should be asking for more. And it harkens back to the conversation you were having about like, what can I say when I'm negotiating with this recruiter? But it's so true. I mean, I think when people talk about the rates of certain creators, like really high level creators, it makes sense because you're giving them access to an audience they don't have access to. You're putting a value on the audience that you have cultivated. Mm-hmm. And in addition, all of the content creation that you can offer them.
Yeah. One of the things people ask all the time is like, how do you make money? And, one of our partners is Capital One. And we've gotten a couple comments from people who see like Capital One on our, webinar promos and stuff. And they're like, what's the connection here? Like, are you trying to sell me a credit card? And I'm like, no, like partnerships don't have to be like, click the link in my bio. Like athletes, NBA players have Quicken loans on their jerseys, and they're not paid to tell you, what kind of software and stuff you should get. Like creators can operate in the same way. We can deliver a straight ad, but we can also be sponsored. We can wear those logos on our jersey like we do on our content. And so it's so cool, like the different kinds of partnerships you can do and how to structure them. And that's my favorite part. I think that's where my business mind comes in. And I'm like, what kind of bundle can I make for this partnership? It's cool to brainstorm.
Yeah, super cool.
While we're on that topic, Katie, do you want to go ahead and jump to your question about that topic? Because we can jump around. We don't have to stick to
which question was
it's like
I'm like looking through like which one
your
was
second
it?
last question, and Grant can like cut this behind this fourth wall breaking stuff out.
Yeah. You scored a major brand deal with Indeed. What other brands have been good partners to you, if you can say? Obviously, maybe there's some sort of NDA in place. And I guess I'm asking more about like, do you put forward maybe I'm going to try to formulate this in the best way. Do you look more for companies that sort of align with salary transparency or maybe the money sector, or you try to go with companies that you appreciate their brand ethos? Yeah. So maybe is it more company niche, or is it more the brand itself and how they show up?
A little bit of both. I will say, like, one of the things behind the scenes that people don't know is I say no to almost 99% of the brands that actually want to partner with us because they don't align with what our audience wants. And I think one of our strengths in the past, like 2 years of building the page, is prioritizing our audience's goals and what they actually need help on instead of selling out, for lack of a better term. And it's tough as a business owner, because we don't sell anything to our audience. So all our revenue is entirely generated by brand partnerships. So it's tough to be, at a crossroads and be like, do I just take any partnership and, make a ton of money? Or do I sacrifice that so that there's balance on the page, but the partnerships align with our audience? And I think making that decision and prioritizing that for partnerships has gained a lot of trust with our audience. And so there's rewards there that I wouldn't trade. And I'm glad we made that choice. Our most successful partnerships have been Indeed, Capital One. I mean, we've done one-offs with like The Knot, Google career certificates, Techsgiving as like a tech summit. And, testing partnerships has also lent insights to what works and what our audience really wants. And from these tests, we really learned that our audience cares about making money. So finance partnerships make sense, but it's not just finance. It's also finance coupled with career. They want to be happy in their careers. And so it's a little bit of like career pivots. They're interested in learning about new careers, but also, are they good? How do I make more money? How do I scale in this? How do I break into it? Is it approachable? How much money do I have to spend? It's people just wanting to level up their careers, I think, financially and professionally. And so Indeed is a perfect partner for that. They have a salary calculator. I mean, from the get-go, when we started STS, my goal, the dream I had was to partner with Indeed, because I got my jobs on Indeed. It was just my go-to job tool, and I liked the user interface, but I also felt like they showed salaries more frequently than other job listing software. And so when I talked to them, we were talking to them, LinkedIn, Monster, ZipRecruiter, and Glassdoor, like all at the same time within like the first 3 months of launching the page, because they were all interested in partnering with us. And so it was kind of ballsy, but I said no to LinkedIn, Monster, and Glassdoor, like without a set deal from Indeed.
Wow.
Because Indeed was the only one that when we talked to and we had to sit down with them, they were the only ones that talked about salary transparency as being important to them as a company and what their goals were to help push the needle forward. Everyone else was just like, what can you promote? Like these are the things that we want. These are our campaigns. And there's just a disconnect there. And so, I mean, we were right. The risk paid off again. Indeed has been our partners from the get-go, basically, and they're our favorite. They give us creative freedom. They let us kind of drive the car in terms of what content we know is going to work and hasn't worked. And gosh, like I'm so grateful that they really give us that creative freedom, because in turn, the content has performed really well. And so it's been mutually beneficial.
Yeah. I think when you have audience trust, or what you're saying, and we've talked to other creators about this, and I think it's a really great way to move as a creator in the space, is you want to know your audience and you want to know what they need. And if you can bring those things to them, whether it's through affiliate marketing or brand sponsorships, I'm like Thanksgiving brain. You're really creating trust with your audience. It's like, oh, Hannah's not promoting something that I'm not going to need. And like you said, selling out. And yeah, maybe she's making the money that she needs to survive off of creating content. But with your audience, the way you can grow, but also create trust, is to give them tools that they want, is to promote the right things. Because I know when I see a creator and I'm like, I know you don't use that skincare brand or this, it's just such a turnoff. And immediately it destroys the trust. But when you have someone that is like, I use this is really important to me, we align with the brand ethos. And you do need to be kind of stingy, and maybe you do sacrifice some opportunities, but I think the payoff is much, much greater going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, there's other creators that I've seen like promoting crypto and stuff, and like everyone has their own opinion on it, but I've avoided risky things like that. I don't want to gamble with my community's trust.
Yeah. And their money too. I mean, it's really valuable for people to, that their money is really important to them.
Yeah. I don't want to ask them to spend more money to make more money. I've just always kind of had an issue with that. And, every type of person who's given me any kind of advice is always like, you need a course. Like, why aren't you selling something? And I'm like, I don't want to. It's not right. It's not what I need to do. And okay, maybe I'm giving up 6 figures for it, but like, it's just not right for me. And I'm okay with that.
It doesn't align with what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
For sure.
And speaking of your values, part of your mission is to combat discriminatory tendencies in employment and close pay gaps that affect marginalized groups. What do you wish more people knew about this topic and the factors that cause it?
Yeah. I mean, point blank period, there are pay gaps that occur in controlled and uncontrolled job sectors, meaning that, whenever we talk about pay gaps, the common arguments we hear are that, okay, well, yeah, it makes sense that like a teacher and a mechanical engineer don't make the same. But the point I want people to know is that there are pay gaps amongst all teachers. Like there are pay gaps amongst all mechanical engineers, and it's not just men and women. It's racial pay gaps. It's pay gaps of people with disabilities. It's pay gaps with the LGBTQ community. Basically, if you are part of a group that has been systemically marginalized, that will carry over into the job sector because we haven't addressed systemic inequities in the system. One of the issues that I like to bring up that another argument we get is, well, people or women don't negotiate. That's not true. Studies have come out that said that women do negotiate as much as their male counterparts. And not only that, there have been studies that have found that even when women and minorities actually negotiated for the same amount as their male or white counterparts, they received less. So they're seen as being more greedy, asking for too much, even when they ask for the exact same amount. And so it's sort of like a losing situation. And it's frustrating that all the solutions so far that we've received to this has kind of put blame back on workers, like, okay, well, women don't negotiate enough. Here's how to negotiate. Here's how to do it better. And it's not addressing the problems of the pay gaps. Like the pay gaps are not budging. The responsibility for equitable pay should lie with the people employing their workers, not the workers being employed. And right now, that's how it is. It's when they ask you, what are your salary requirements? They're putting that responsibility on the worker to guess for a fair amount instead of just offering it. So the goal with pay transparency as a whole is to pressure companies to see the value of listing pay in the job description and not just like a crazy 100K difference range, something fair, something that you're actually willing to pay your employees and also paying them their fair rate, cost of living adjustment. Salaries have not kept up with inflation and cost of living. And this is something that I hope organizations see if they read the comment section, is that pay is something that people prioritize a lot more than the cooler, the open bar on Fridays at the company. They want to be paid fairly. So I think a shift of values is something that I hope we influence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I saw one of your recent YouTube videos about like the gap in the WNBA.
Oh yeah.
And that was really good because there's like you kind of debunked a bunch of myths that I see spread around on TikTok all the time. And
thanks. That was my
seemed
goal.
like, yeah, exactly. And I didn't know this, but you had like kind of a background working in the sports industry back in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then could you tell us a little bit about some of the biggest myths that people like have about the WNBA's gap?
Yeah. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, like I just didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. And when I went to college, I remember I changed my major like 5 times my freshman year. I was just constantly bopping back and forth from different careers. And eventually I just settled on sports because I was an athlete growing up. My dad's from Cleveland, Ohio, or from Youngstown. So I was raised a Cleveland sports fan, which is like a big deal. And so sports were a big part of my life. And I was like, okay, I'll work there. All my internships were unpaid. I did it for like 2 years and it was the most miserable experience I've ever had. Like it doesn't even compare to telemarketing, which I hated too. Like working in sports is so criminally underpaid, like $0 underpaid, paid in pizza. Also like a very big time commitment. I should have realized it, but when you work in sports, you're working Friday nights and you have to be there, around like 2:00 to set up. You're working until the stadium is shut down. You're working weekends. So like work-life balance is non-existent and you're not getting paid anything. So I loved it. I really enjoyed it, but I realized I was better off being a fan instead of working in the system. And so I quit, which was unfortunate because I decided to leave sports at the end of my junior year of college. So I had like 1 more year to figure it out. And so I decided on management. It was the only thing I could graduate with without having to do extra classes, which I couldn't afford. And so I ended up in telemarketing when I graduated and bopped my way into tech. So that was my sports story. But I've always like been very passionate about it. And as I've waded into pay transparency movements and pay inequality, it really brought me back full circle to pay inequities in the WNBA and with female athletes. And I just get so frustrated as a fan of women's sports when men say, no one watches women's sports. The only reason they're underpaid is because they're not bringing in enough revenue, like all these things. And it's just frustrating when it's not true. And we know that there are definitely improvements that are going to take time, but I think it's important to share accurate information. Otherwise, progress is so much harder to push forward. And so the goal of the video was just to address these myths and talk about what the real issue is, because especially in the WNBA with pay inequity, we're always hearing that, well, they don't deserve to be paid as much as LeBron or Steph Curry. And it's like, that's not what they're asking for. The actual issue resides in the contract. So NBA players receive 50% of league revenue. So whatever the league generates, they make 50%. That's not the same in the WNBA. And a lack of pay transparency is actually a problem there, because revenue is not like publicly reported. It's just been stated in interviews and like estimates. And so I love when people are like, you should do your research. And I'm like, I spent 2 months on this video. I spoke with economists. I spoke with reporters. I spoke with players. I did my research. And so the economists that we spoke with said that the league revenue was publicly being reported as 60 million, but it was actually more like 200 million. And the lack of transparency there is harmful to players, because based on the contract, if they were making 60 million, and based on how we know how much players are paid, which is publicly reported salaries, their contract split was like 30%, which is not 50, but it's okay. But if the league revenue is actually 200 million, it was looking like less than 10%. I mean, imagine going to a WNBA game and knowing that the players that you're there to watch, whose jersey you're wearing, the only reason you're there, are making less than 10% of what the league generates. I don't care about profit. I don't, that just isn't right. It doesn't make sense. And so it's an important issue that I think with contract renegotiations coming up here in 2025, I'm hoping that bringing awareness to the issue will help these ladies get a fair contract.
So tell us, what are the biggest mistakes that people make in the job interview process when negotiating their salary for a new role?
The number one mistake is not negotiating. If you accept the first offer that the company gives you, you're definitely leaving money on the table. And it's okay if you haven't negotiated. That's another thing, is just to give yourself grace. Like, I went to Georgetown and I graduated not knowing that you should negotiate, so even the smart, quote unquote, smart schools, good schools, are not teaching students the actual essential skills they need to advocate for themselves and be empowered at work. So it's okay if you didn't learn and you didn't know, but if you know now, then from this point on, you have to negotiate, and just see every first offer you get as a starting point. You also should come prepared to every job negotiation. If you know you're talking money, which should be the first conversation you have with a recruiter or the company, you should come prepared with your market research, meaning that you should have explored general and specific salary databases, done all the research on how much you should be making based on your location, your years of experience, your education, your skills, every type of contextual factor you can think of that would affect your pay. Know what your range is and make sure that it's a range that's no greater difference than $20,000 for min to max, because you want to give yourself room to negotiate, but always offer the higher end of your range, because you can negotiate down. But if you start too low, you might fall out of your minimum range, and you don't want that. So negotiate, come prepared, and ask for the top of your range always.
Yeah.
That's great advice. I also feel like it's almost a win-win when like both sides have more information about each other's needs.
Yeah.
And one more thing that kind of surprised me is that when companies notice that somebody is asks for the range up front, that's almost like a signal or an indicator that that person is like a great fit and values themselves and stuff like that. It just sends a lot of like positive messages.
Yeah. And from the employee side too, I think it indicates that the company is there in good faith. They're not trying to screw you over. They're not trying to trick you. It's a really great way to demonstrate that you're committed to them. And I don't know why companies are not latching on to the positives of pay transparency instead of fighting it. I mean, eventually it's going to become a legal concern if they don't move fast enough with the laws, It's something they should be aware of now.
I want to ask, what is the best feedback you've received from your audience?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think I can't like think of one versus more so like multiple. And I can't even zero in on one because I get feedback all the time. And like my response to that is just to be open to feedback, to welcome it. Because every type of feedback that we get from our audience, whether it's they want to see more of this type of job, they want to, for example, like one of the things that I think distinguishes us from other, not copycats, but other accounts that kind of have done the similar thing is that some of them have really latched onto the idea of only interviewing really high earners. And when we started our page, we started in our neighborhood, the DMV area, which is high cost of living and high salaries, but it doesn't go as far. 100K here goes a lot for less than in Idaho. But what we realized was that there has to be a balance between aspirational content, and like seeing really high salaries and being like, oh gosh, that's curiosity inducing. That's, I don't believe it. Do I believe it? But then also giving representation. And because our page is about almost as much about our community as it is us, I just see myself as like a constant figure, but I'm just holding the mic. I'm not leading. I'm not the reason the content performs well. It's the community and what they want to share. And so giving them representation in the sense of interviewing everybody, not just the people making six figures, but the dental assistant making $21 an hour, the college student not making anything, or the broke entrepreneur. The stories are almost as much important as the salaries themselves. And I think that that's what our audience told us from the get-go, is that they like seeing the high salaries, but it only goes so far. You also want to feel represented because if all you see is six figures, you can be like, what am I doing wrong? It's kind of depressing. And so when we decided to really focus on interviewing everyone and not just choosing the high earners as what we show, it built trust. And that was feedback that I think I'm really glad I took from them.
100%. Yeah.
I love whoever's managing your social media, especially. Oh, seriously? Okay. Okay. You're the perfect person to ask this then. Because on TikTok, you're not afraid to be like sassy in the comments if you're dealing with like bad faith conversations and like trolls. Yeah. So I would love to have you explain kind of your philosophy around this. I've seen other brands do this as well, like Ryanair, like really well. But I'll give you an example for yours. Like you interviewed Mark Cuban.
Are you comfortable sharing your salary on camera with us?
I don't have a salary. I don't get paid a salary at all.
You don't get paid a salary at all?
No, I make money from my investments.
You asked him, how much, what his salary is. And some troll asked you like, bro asked a billionaire if he gets a salary. What's he going to say? A 500 million a year salary? And then you said, and if we didn't ask, broke boys like you would troll us for not asking.
Grant, bring it on screen.
Yeah, that was a choice.
I love it.
I just hired a part-time social media manager, and I've been struggling so hard with kind of telling her what our voice is and like what you're allowed to respond to and not, because like I'm not a good model of, don't respond to the trolls. But I think now I'm kind of just having fun with it. Like, I remember when I wrote that, I like showed my husband, I was like, look what I said. And I like laughed to myself because I thought it was hilarious. And I didn't even think about like, oh, should a company, like a big page, be saying this? But like, I think that's kind of the funny aspect of it, is that it is just me behind this. Like, it's so many people have asked us, like, are you guys like, do you work for Indeed? Like, were you, and I think it's a compliment because they think that we're like bigger than we are. But really, it's just me and my husband, like going on the street, editing these interviews, posting them on TikTok and Instagram. And if you write a comment, I read it and I'll respond. And so we've gotten so many trolls and I've seen every kind of comment at this point that I just think it's funny to respond. And so, then like you get ratioed and like our community is they're the best. Like they stand up for us. Sometimes now I don't even have to, I just let the troll comments sit there. I don't even delete them because I'm like, our community's going to get you and I'm just going to let them, like
I love that.
I have no tolerance for like trolls or hateful comments. Like I will block somebody so quick, and I probably block too much. But my thinking is, if you watch our content and your knee-jerk reaction is to say something not very nice, I don't want you as part of my community anyway. I don't care if you see my content. I have competitors that I bet you'd like to follow anyway, that you'd like better. So I don't feel like I'm losing anything. I just have fun with it. I love responding snarkily.
And
I love that.
Breaking the fourth wall for a second, is this cool if we keep this in, or is it going to make you like look bad or anything?
Absolutely. No, that's hilarious. That's one of my favorite ones. I'm glad you chose it.
I love that. I love that. Your content depends greatly on meeting people and their willingness to participate.
Yeah.
You can't create content at home with zero human interaction. What advice would you give someone creating interview style content? And I know obviously you go around with your husband, but how do you keep yourself safe during interviews if you don't know who you're approaching?
Oh, yeah. That's a really good question, and something that as we've grown in profile and recognition, I'm not paranoid about, but definitely concerned about. I've heard a couple stories of people being stalked, and that's very scary. So especially because we're not in the safety of our homes when we create content, it's something that I'm concerned about. I think it's just a matter of like not drawing too much attention to ourselves, which is tough because we do want to draw attention in a way. And I guess that's the value of wearing green, right? Like when I wear bright green, it's sort of some people don't know my name, like that. It's kind of a joke. Like I made my Instagram user account name That Money Street Girl because so many people would like just look at me and point and be like, you're that Money Street Girl. And I'm like, I'll take it. So the green helps. And so the right people that will recognize us will see the green, and I'm not concerned about them. Like usually people that recognize us are good faith. The ones that I'm like concerned about are the ones that are, you don't know how they're going to turn when you ask them a question. And so in that sense, like it's really just picking up energy. Sometimes when I'm out on the street, and people wouldn't guess this, but I am kind of shy and introverted. It's like a switch that I turn on when I go out and film, and I'm like, okay, like now I'm in film mode, but then afterwards I'm, in my cocoon for a couple hours and regenerating. But I'll stand there and I'll let a ton of people pass me without asking anyone, because I'm looking for the right person, and picking up a good vibe. I don't ask anybody that looks like they're in a rush, that looks like they're kind of mean. I always ask people that like have made eye contact and like look friendly, especially when you have a clipboard. In the city, people can be really mean. It's tough. New York is my nightmare.
I live there.
Interviewing. I hate interviewing in New York.
It's intense.
It's intense, and people don't want to stop, and they can be very rude, but that's the city. I guess my safety is my husband. Like he's a former US Marine. So in a way I have like some safety nest there where I'm like, I don't think I'd want to mess with him, but you can never guess what people will do. And so I think it's just picking up good energy. Don't ask people that look dodgy, good street smarts. I've grown up in cities and overseas my entire life. So I think I have really good street smarts, which has probably helped me. But yeah, and I mean, wear good running shoes in case you got to run.
Yeah. Wear your branded Air Force Ones.
Yeah, exactly. Good running shoes.
I think that's great advice. Like just in terms of who you actually select to be part of it. And then what happens afterward? Like take us behind the scenes. What kind of conversation do you have with them before you actually interview them?
Yeah, I have the pitch branded in my brain. So I'll see somebody. I'm like, okay, I'll ask them. I go up to them. James will be, behind me, and I'll have the mic. And it's also kind of like strategy. I try to like point the mic because we have this mic flag and it says Indeed on it. So sometimes I'll like point it so that it gives us, some authority. Like people aren't like, who is this? Are they asking for money? They're like, oh, Indeed, I know that. And so I'll ask them like, hey, I'm Hannah. This is James. We're from Salary Transparency. We ask people what they do for a living and how much they make to promote paid transparency. Can I interview you really quick? And usually they'll say either no, or they'll be like, how long does it take? And it's literally like a 2-minute interview because the interviews have to be like under 90 seconds for content. So it's really just however long it goes is however long they want to talk to me. And sometimes once they start, it turns into a 15-minute interview. But like, I always get their consent first and foremost. I think that's really important. I wouldn't want someone filming me without my consent or turning a camera on to film me until I know what's going on. And I think that translates to how well the interviews end up going, because by making that choice, we've garnered their trust. We haven't like betrayed them and we're not clout chasing. We're really just telling them what the mission is, and they understand that, and it opens the door. And then I always have my standard questions like, what's your job title? What do you do? How much do you make? Do you feel like you're fairly compensated? But each interview is unique. It's a conversation between the two of us is what I tell them. And it can go any way they want to share, but it's always a good time. And then after the end, I always get their signature. We get their America is so happy. You want to make sure you have a signature before you post content, because we've had people like reach out after and ask us to take it down. And I didn't, I always respected that until we got signatures, and it became, kind of annoying if it's been up for a week and then you're like, can you take it down? So it helps to have the legal protection. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. And we film with our iPhone, like in a Rode mic on Amazon. So we don't have a lot of equipment.
Okay. And so I guess the signatures are one of the things you've changed since the beginning, or is there anything else that you've kind of learned the hard way or something like that?
Good mics are a really good investment. When we started, the first day we went out was not the content that we got, because we got a couple interviews with this other mic, and it ended up that it didn't even work. Like you couldn't even pick it up on the phone. So the actual day we went out and filmed the first interviews was the second mic we were trying. And we stuck with that one for a couple months, but we kept having issues. And so then we got the Rode mics, which are like the wireless, like clip-ons, and then they go in the mic. So it's like super easy to travel with. So I would say investing in good microphone equipment will save you a lot of stress, hassle, and redos. But yeah, gosh, we just film with our iPhones. We did not get an expensive camera. There's no need. I think James, my husband's camera is like a 13 Pro. So you don't need the 15, 13 works just fine.
Yeah. I love that you said how, like you just mentioned, every interview is sort of unique. And my favorite interviews of yours are the ones where you interview the kids, asking them what their parents
Those
do
are
and
great.
how much their parents make. And then you actually interview the parents. I'm curious, how did you come up with that idea? And like, what's your favorite part about filming those?
Mm-hmm. I was so nervous to film those because I think like, I love what we do. It's very straightforward, but it can be kind of boring to do the same thing over and over again. And like, I think I was at a moment, it was like at least 6 months in, and I was like, I want to try something new. Like, what's something else that would work that is the same vein? And, a lot of people were commenting, and this is like listening to audience feedback and kind of like figuring out how to make it work in terms of new content. People were like, I don't talk about money with my parents, or I want to talk about money with my kids. I'm showing them these interviews. Like, it's interesting. And I started thinking like, I don't even know how much my parents made. And then I got the idea that it would not only be cute, it would be like so heartwarming to hear what kids say that, like, they think their parents do. Cause we never really know the job title. We just kind of know like the actions. And I thought that would translate like into a really cute conversation. And so it was very scary to ask, because I'm used to asking adults, and like going up to them. But I was like, can I interview your kid, and ask them how much you make? And I'm sure you can guess we had like so many families tell us no, and I don't blame them. And so I think like if you want to do street interviews and like this type of content, you kind of have to have some cojones, like you have to have some courage, because you're going to get told no a lot. But the ones who tell you yes, it's worth it, because like those interviews are some of our most highest viewed content that we've created, because it's so cute. Like,
Yeah.
it's adorable. And like the kids, the girl who's like, my mom makes $5. Like, I had no idea how to respond to that. I was like, oh, okay. And like, what does she buy you with that? And just keeping it going. It's very, you can't guess what they're going to say. But I like that we've been given the grace by our audience to try something new, and that it worked.
I loved that one. That one was the one where she described her mom as like what she does as she asks people if they're mad or sad.
And she was the therapist. Isn't that adorable?
That is so cute.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? It's so funny that you said this. It reminds me of when you're on TikTok or Instagram and a parent is showing something their kid wrote in school. And it's like, how old is your mom? And it's like 400 years old.
Right.
What's her favorite thing to do? Drink wine. Like things like that are just like so funny and based on observation, or just like them literally having no concept of like how much someone would make in a certain job. So it is super cute to see that.
And it opens a window, I think, to not only that family directly, but families watching that, you don't have to sit down with a 5-year-old and be like, I make $80,000 and this is my job title. But like, now you've opened the door to some curiosity. Like, the kid probably hadn't been put on the spot to say what their parent does. But now they're like, well, like, what do they do? And they'll start learning the concept of money and like how much they want and like what they want. Those are conversations I didn't have with my family. And gosh, I wish I would have known how much $30,000 in student loans really is before I took it out. It's like building blocks to those conversations.
Yeah, 100%. Where do you see the future of STS going? I know we talked a little bit before about not being sure exactly where your career will go, but maybe the company itself or the account itself, where do you see it going?
I see Salary Transparent Street sticking around for a while. I'm not sure if it's something I'll be doing, full time for five years from now, probably for a couple more years. But just like, at this point, I know myself and I get tired doing the same thing over and over. So I think inevitably I'm going to want to pivot. But it really is like my baby, my brainchild. So I think I'll take my time with whatever that will look like. But just like, I look at legacy and I want to make sure that what we do has actual impact and leaves an impact on the world and workers. And so I look at my goals as my 3 C's, my 3 pillars. So community, corporate, and Congress. And I think that the growth of the page aligns with those pillars. Like, the first 2 years have been very community oriented, like building the community, giving them information, empowering them with that content. But now we're at the serious bit, like we've riled up the crowd. We've brought attention to the issue. A lot of people are talking about it, but the change rests with corporate America and making them understand how important it is. So I think that my roles will kind of shift more towards like activism and like Congress as one of my pillars. I've gotten a little involved with legislation. Like, I testified in support of DC's Pay Range Act twice. I've been on Capitol Hill and talked with senators and congresswomen like Eleanor Holmes Norton, who brought forth the federal pay transparency law. And so I think it would be really cool to I know that our page has had an impact in the social movement of pay transparency, but I kind of want to solidify it. And I think being involved in legislation is a good way to do that and like leave our mark a little bit. But I see it growing internationally too, the page. Like, people are like, when are you coming to Europe? Like, when are you coming to South America? And so I think it'd be cool to start creating like more pages that are under the umbrella of STS, but like a Canada page and a Europe page, and outsourcing creators that work in those areas to do what we do and keep it going.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. And I
That's
feel
so
like
cool.
you're uniquely suited for this. Like Hannah Williams is the only one that can solve this specific problem.
It's going to take a lot of us, but like that's the beauty of social media, right? Like we're all kind of small little ants on this planet, but we can gather together and align on something that we all struggle with. Like, and that's the thing with pay transparency. Sometimes people get political with it and they're like, oh, the libs, that's your economy. And I'm like, okay, like politics aside, like pay transparency is something that left and right benefit from. So like, can we all just agree that this is something that we all need? Because the only people benefiting from secrecy are our employers. And we need to change that. So it's cool.
Yeah. It's really cool
100%.
how like your background in working in government is leading you to think more about this and like actually have the like vocabulary and maybe the connections to think about how to
Yeah.
actually make an impact there.
Yeah. I feel really privileged, humbled, and grateful. It's the coolest ride. I'm grateful for what I can do.
Last question before we start to wrap up is like, what are your thoughts on like financial transparency when it comes to the creator economy? Like what's missing
Mm-hmm.
there? Obviously like salaries is more for like full-time employees, but when it comes to creators, I guess like brand deals might be one of the like
Yeah.
areas that people are thinking about, because there's also a similar dance there where company will ask you, well, what are your rates? And then you're like, well, what's your budget? And
Yeah.
yeah, there's a whole, yeah, go ahead.
I left like the 9 to 5 issue and just hopped right into another issue. There's such an issue with secrecy and pay transparency or lack of in the creator economy. And I learned pretty quickly that I was undercharging like within the first few months by talking with other creators. And so there's not like a good solution for it right now. Like there's databases like FYPM and Clara for Creators that allow creators to share like how much a brand deal was worth and they can rate the company. And I think those are helpful because it's kind of like an Indeed for creators. Like you can do some research, but it's still the same issue of companies have different budgets. And like, for example, one of my big partners recently like told me that their budget got cut and like for social, but like I think that there's a lack of transparency there in terms of like budget being cut or like the budget being spread out over multiple creators and like a certain budget being cut. And so it's really like, it's tough because they have the discretion of whether or not they want to share that with you. It's a company, it's an internal thing. And so it's harder to ask for transparency from them in that capacity versus being like an employee and working for the company. You're not privy to that information or the goings on of the company. And so it's tough. Like I don't have a great solution for it yet, other than what I've been trying to do to make sure I'm charging competitively and doing good, proper brand deals that are fair is talking to a ton of creators. And it's in the same vein, like when I tell people that they should be doing market research, one of those things that they should be doing is talking with other people in the similar job role, in their company, in a similar department. It's the same thing with creators. So I'm talking to people that are finance creators that are working with the companies I'm working with. And it's tough, right? Because like in a way, if in a corporate capacity, if you work at a 9 to 5, if you tell your colleague that you're making X and you're making like more than them and you find out that that person is underpaid, you don't make less money by informing your colleague that they're underpaid. You can only both make, a fair amount. But in content creation, it's a little different. Like there is sort of a risk that if you say what your rate is and it's very high and it's fair, you could risk like sharing that information with someone that's going to charge less and undercut you, and the company doesn't have to pay you both the same amount. So it's a unique situation that's really tough to figure out. And so I think it's a blend of companies acting right, being fair, but also creators working together instead of against each other to make sure that everybody's fairly paid. Cause like, I don't know what you gain from undercutting someone by charging less because you're just consistently going to be paid less. It's better to all work together. So
Well said. Let's wrap it up with some of these questions we like to ask people at the end of every interview. Number one is, can you shine the spotlight on another creator? Who do you enjoy watching?
Ooh, who don't I enjoy watching? Oh my God, there's so many. I'm like trying to choose. Let me see. There's a creator right now, Erin McGough, who I see all the time. I'm sure you know her, Advice with Erin. I love her content because it doesn't feel like you're being talked down to. And I feel like sometimes creators, especially in the education space like she is, and like careers, it can feel like you're constantly being lectured to with information being shared. But really, like, her whole niche is that she's your internet big sister, and it's more so like lessons learned and like learn from me. And I just think that there's a softness to it that works really well. And I mean, no wonder she's hugely popular. So she's just someone that I like watching as a consumer of content, but also as a friend. She's killing it.
Is there any content that you're currently obsessed with, and why? And this could be
Ooh.
anything. Like, it could be YouTube, Netflix,
Mhm.
movies, books.
Yeah, I go through phases. Like sometimes it's like true crime, and sometimes it's like
That's my
just all of,
favorite.
I had a real true crime phase during the pandemic. I've kind of come out the tunnel,
I know.
but
It can be a lot.
it can be a lot. I love people doing like new kinds of street interviews because it's the same type of thing. It's talking to strangers on the street, but when people do it in a new way or like with a new topic, I think it's so innovative and interesting. And so like the Meet Cutes series, like the people that ask people, are you in a couple? Are you guys, a couple? How did you meet? I think that's so sweet. They're always like really heartwarming. It's like when you need a lift, you watch that. Also, like the doggist, the guy who takes pictures of dogs on the street. I think that's so sweet. Like, I think I'm leaning towards light content now
Mhm.
and just like trying to make it to the end of the year.
Yeah. My friend got interviewed by the doggist and she was freaking out because she's always watching dogs and she just
Yeah,
loves dogs. And she was like, guys, he interviewed me. It's
that's
so
the
cute.
dream. I
And
want to
just,
be on Meet Cutes so bad.
yeah, that one's so cute. And she said to me the other day, she's like, can you imagine if this was your job, just like taking photos of dogs? It's awesome.
Dream job. Dream job. Like, I swear there's a job for everyone out there. If you hate what you're doing now, think of something to do on social media because it could be a full-time job.
That's really good advice. It's true. You see
Yeah.
the most things you never expected to see on social. People are making money and becoming
Yeah.
creators and they love it.
Yeah. You've got nothing to lose by trying.
Yeah, it's true.
Do you want to share your meet cute?
Actually, I will. Thank you for asking. My husband and I actually met in downtown Clarendon in Arlington, Virginia, at this like dive bar that's really popular here called Spider Kelly's on my 21st birthday. And I was not intoxicated yet, but he like walked in with his friends, and it was literally love at first sight. Like I was on the whole other side of the bar and somehow locked eyes with him as he was coming in at the entrance, whole other side of the bar. And like we held eye contact for literally like 10 seconds. It was really bizarre because I was looking at him and I'm like, wait, is he looking at me? And like we just didn't break eye contact. So I was like, holy crap. Like, and it was love at first sight. And then it ended up that him and his friends left. And so I thought I had like missed my opportunity to talk to him. But then they came back, and what we found out was that I wasn't supposed to be there that night. He wasn't supposed to come back with his friends and see me like later. And so it just felt like it was fate mixed with like love at first sight. And we've been together ever since. We're going on 6 years this December.
Oh,
So
that's so cute.
yeah, we met playing shuffleboard. Yeah. We just got married, and our reception was at Spider Kelly's at the bar where we met, and we like recreated like some pictures at the shuffleboard table where we met, and it
That's
was
so
just
cute.
it was sweet. It was sweet.
I love that. That's amazing.
Any final words you want to leave the audience with?
So much. If you're unhappy where you're at professionally or financially, there is something you can do to change your situation. Like whether you think you've got it figured out or not, but you won't figure it out unless you try. And so just being stagnant and comfortable is the worst place to be for change. So embrace being uncomfortable because it's the only way you'll get where you want to be. Like I said, like finding out I was underpaid was an unfortunate event and really crappy place to be. But if I hadn't gone through that experience and all those lows, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, which is a true high. So just don't give up on yourself, and go make more money.
I love that because you're both emphasizing like individual responsibility, but you're also recognizing the systemic issues and trying to tackle that as well.
Yeah. It's nobody's fault that they end up in this way. I think I don't know, there's such a pressure to have something so consistent and to not delve into something maybe creative or inconsistent. But there is a huge wave towards shifting that, I think.
Yeah. And the possibilities are endless. Like I created this job for myself. I didn't apply for it. So just be creative, try new things. Don't be afraid to fail.
That's so cool.
Where can people find you on the internet? And can you tell us about the resources that we could find on your website?
Yeah. So you can find us at Salary Transparent Street on all social platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. If your grandpa has it, you probably have it. And then on our website, salarytransparentstreet.com, you can find our salary database. So you can do some market research there, search through our database, make sure you're fairly compensated. And if you need help with market research or salary negotiation, we also offer free guides on our resources page and a ton of blogs that will have tons of free information to help you get what you need.
It's awesome.
Hannah Williams, thanks for being on Inside the Creator Studio.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun.
So fun. This episode was recorded with StreamYard. If you want to make a podcast like this, check out the link in the description.
And if you want to leave us a voice message through Spotify, we'll leave a link to that too. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or leave us a review. Thanks for joining us today on Inside the Creator Studio. We'll see you next time.